What's good? It's Woog. The knockout king turned decision machine returns to the ring. We've got Edgar Berlanga, 21 wins and 0 losses, taking on Padraig McCrory, 18 wins and 0 losses. Now, on paper, is this the most exciting fight you could make involving Edgar Berlanga? No, not by a long shot. We could think of about 8 to 12 168 pounders that we'd rather see Berlanga fight. But there are some interesting components to this matchup between Berlanga and McCrory, and we're going to get into that. But Edgar Berlanga has just had one of the most interesting career trajectories in recent memory, and it's because he became a sensation like 3 to 4 years ago by scoring 16 consecutive first round knockouts. So he started his career 16-0 with 16 knockouts, but it's not just any 16 knockouts. We've got a few fighters that have 100% KO ratios. I think Virgil Ortiz Jr. to this day still has a 100% KO ratio. And granted, I actually think Virgil Ortiz pound for pound is a better fighter than Berlanga. But what made Berlanga's so extraordinary is that this was 16, again, first round knockouts. I'm not sure we're going to see that again anytime soon. And in doing so, he got a whole bunch of fanfare. He got a lot of celebrity attention. I mean, I remember Lil Wayne talking about him, Snoop Dogg. I mean, he kicks it with Fat Joe in the Terror Squad. Well, Fat Joe, I don't know, is the Terror Squad still a thing? Well, either way, Edgar Berlanga pretty much became a celebrity faster than his in-ring accomplishments could keep up with his name recognition. Somewhat similarly to Ryan Garcia, but there are distinct differences as well. But it's funny, you watch some of the old or early Edgar Berlanga fights, and you know how, the top ranked broadcast, Joe Tessitore in particular, and I'm not just singling him out because, even back in the HBO days, Jim Lampley would do the same thing. You usually get the main play-by-play guy kind of exalting the A-side fighter or the up-and-coming prospect that they are trying to build up on the network. So you'll see like a whole bunch of early Berlanga clips where Joe Tessitore is just like, Edgar Berlanga, have you ever seen this type of power? We have not seen this type of power since the likes of fill in the blank, Edgar Berlanga. It's just kind of funny because we see that with so many different prospects as they're building it up. But, in fairness, it was very odd and very rare that you had this type of early career recognition. Like they were likening him to like Mike Tyson at the time. Now, these knockouts were all against like C, D level fighters or worse. So it's not like he was knocking out anybody with a name, but again, first round knockouts across the board. And then he fights Damon Nicholson. And from that point forward, for his next 5 fights, he would win unanimous decision victories. So no more knockouts out of his past 5 fights. He went from 16 first round knockouts in a row to 5 decision wins in a row. And those decision wins came against Damon Nicholson again. He was the first guy to survive the distance against Berlanga. That was an 8-rounder. And then against Marcelo Coceres, who we recently saw get knocked out by Diego Pacheco, but Coceres gave Pacheco a pretty good run for his money. By the way, Diego Pacheco is one of my favorite prospects right now, who's in his early 20s. He's like 21 or something like that. But when Berlanga fought Coceres, because Berlanga fought Coceres a couple years before Diego Pacheco did, Coceres actually knocked Berlanga down, but Berlanga won a unanimous decision win. It was pretty competitive, and then Berlanga beats Steve Rolls via decision. Y'all might remember Steve Rolls against Triple G, and then Berlanga fights Romer Alexis Angulo. That's who David Benavidez missed weight against, which costed Benavidez the WBC title for the second time. Romer Angulo, he hung in there with Berlanga, frustrated Berlanga to the point that Berlanga bit Romer Angulo and then was suspended. And between that suspension and multiple injuries, Berlanga was pretty inactive over the past year and a half. So I think that the injuries have cleared up. Berlanga said that, his injuries are past him now. But there was also some promotional turmoil where Top Rank was trying to put him in there against, marginally better fighters. Like I think Jesse Hart was one of the guys they were trying to match Berlanga up against. Berlanga and his team, they weren't really with it. So Berlanga parts ways with Top Rank, goes to Matchroom DAZN. Obviously, they're trying to angle Berlanga for a Canelo fight, which I think is still somewhat in play. We'll see how this Canelo next opponent unfolds. There's a ton of speculation. But Berlanga goes to Matchroom, fights on DAZN, and his first fight with Matchroom is against Jason Quigley. Jason Quigley got smoked pretty early against Demetrius Andre, but outside of that, Quigley's a pretty decent fighter. I would say B-, C+. Well, Quigley gives Berlanga a very competitive fight. Quigley's moving, he's boxing intelligently, he's doing all of the things that a Sergio Mora just fawns over, the sweet science style of boxing where you don't have a big punch, but you're tactical and you have enough skill and technique to where you could still be competitive, still win some exchanges, still win a few rounds. Again, Berlanga versus Quigley was competitive. Berlanga scores a late knockdown of Quigley. So Berlanga, again, he was having trouble in the early to middle rounds, started to do a lot better in the later rounds, started to win more demonstratively, started to hurt Jason Quigley, and he even, again, put him down late in the fight. And those scorecards were a little bit misleading. It was 116 to 108, 118 to 106, and another 116 to 108. I thought that the fight was a little bit closer than that, especially closer than 118 to 106. I didn't agree with that one at all. So now Berlanga is about to fight Padraig McCrory, and you could kind of say that this might be a bit of a step-up opponent. I know that he doesn't have the same name recognition as Romer Angulo. Like, you've heard of him before. You've probably heard of Steve Rolls before. Maybe even the same with Jason Quigley. But with McCrory, what makes this fight interesting is that McCrory isn't like an old fighter who's over the hill and who's just trying to hang on. Like Steve Rolls right now is like 39. Romer Alexis Angulo, 39. And both of them are, well post prime. Padraig McCrory is, he's not a young fighter. He himself is 35 years old, but he's an undefeated fighter who's still kind of coming up and trying to seize his moment. Like he's fought at light heavyweight before. In fact, he won an IBO, not any longer one of the 4 major sanctioning bodies, but a IBO light heavyweight title against Leon Bunn in Germany. McCrory has also won some of those regional belts. He won like a WBC, like it was an international silver super middleweight 168-pound title. So he's won lesser titles. He's been pretty highly ranked by the WBA for some time. I think right now he's like a top 3 or top 4 WBA contender. And his latest fight against Steve Woodall, that took place in Belfast, Northern Ireland. That's the hometown of Padraig McCrory. That fight was seemed to be the fight that would catapult him, maybe catapult's not the word, but put him in position for either like a title fight or like a top contender spot or just something bigger on the other side of that fight. And McCrory beat Steve Woodall. That was actually a pretty entertaining fight. They were both coming forward. They were both exchanging a lot of hard punches. So Padraig McCrory, unlike a Steve Rolls or a Romer Angulo or even a Marcelo Coceres, who has also fought, I believe, Billy Joe Saunders, unlike them, Padraig McCrory sees this as being his show. He doesn't see himself as being the B-side to Edgar Berlanga. He's like, wait a second, no, this is my story. That's at least how he feels as a regionally highly touted, undefeated fighter who is looking to have his moment. So when I size up Edgar Berlanga versus Padraig McCrory, both of these guys are 6'1". And if you look at stylistically, what has given Edgar Berlanga issues in the past, besides maybe some slick counterpunching, or, I mean, he hasn't run into like a great jab yet. But when you look at, say, the Jason Quigley fight, it was Quigley's movement. I look at Edgar Berlanga as being pretty heavy-footed. Like if boxing was as simple as being planted and the other guy is right in front of you and you don't have to move, the guy's not moving laterally, you don't have to trace him going backwards, you don't have to trace him going side to side. He's right there. You could plant your feet, widen your base, and put your hips into every shot you throw. If that was boxing in its totality, Edgar Berlanga might be a champion right now. But that's just not the reality of how boxing works. There are a lot of different dynamics and a bunch of different elements that could be employed by certain fighters. That's why I think like a Demetrius Andrade would give Berlanga a lot of issues. I think that any mover who is intelligently moving laterally and is either sticking a good jab out or is defensively sound, I think that a lot of those guys can give Edgar Berlanga an issue, not to mention other fighters like I think Munguia could be a problem, David Morrell, all kinds of Canelo Alvarez, David Benavidez. You could go down the list, Diego Pacheco. And in building Berlanga's career, a lot of people saw him start, fighting these decision wins and still didn't see a huge jump in opponent quality. And he started to get a lot of criticism for that, to where people wonder whether he wants a fight against Munguia or against some of these other top caliber 168 guys. But I kind of look at it like this is a good learning opportunity to get this type of experience against different fighters. Steve Rolls, he's kind of, he's a little bit smaller. He's about 5'10", fights a little bit lower. He's looking for counter-punching opportunities. Jason Quigley, he was moving a lot, gave Berlanga a different look. Marcelo Caceres, good counter-puncher, moves pretty well too. Alexis Angulo comes forward, likes to fight in the phone booth style, likes to get a little bit closer to you before letting his hands go. It's different styles that are giving Berlanga different looks. And that first round knockout streak could have been very damaging if they then sent him in for the slaughter against a true top 168 guy. So I think that it's been important for him to get all of these rounds against these different B or C level fighters and to get that type of experience under your belt. And this fight against McCrory is another good example of that. Again, I think that McCrory might actually be a step up for Berlanga, but lucky for Berlanga, when you look at McCrory's style, this guy is a come forward. He's got a jab, but it's not a great jab. He's orthodox like Berlanga, and he's looking to launch right hands and left hooks. He's looking to engage in a firefight. He's usually coming forward, usually trying to track you down. He didn't have to do too much stalking of Steve Woodall. Steve Woodall was looking for a firefight as well, but that's kind of McCrory's style. He fancies himself a power puncher. Now, he only has like a 50% KO ratio, but he is a pretty hard hitter. Like, he didn't finish Steve Woodall. That fight went the distance. In fact, his last 3 fights went the distance. The last time McCrory stopped a fighter was against Leon Bunn when he won that IBO light heavyweight title. His last 3 fights have been at super middleweight. So he does have some power, but his style of fight, again, is mostly coming forward and looking to hunt you down and to hit you with right hands and left hooks. Again, he doesn't have a great jab, but he'll throw it out there usually to set up the right hand. This might be a style that's tailor-made for Berlanga. Like, Berlanga I see him as being heavy-footed. He is front foot, right? And he actually does have a pretty good jab, Berlanga does. Now, he's front-footed to where when he takes that step forward, it seems like he's putting so much weight on that front foot, trying to get in position to let his power punches go, that if you throw something back, he can maybe lean back, maybe lean to the side, but his feet aren't in position to continue to move. That's why I think it's important that he had that fight with Jason Quigley. All of these are kind of rounding out Berlanga's skills little by little. So Berlanga, he probably has the punching power edge over McCrory, who again is a power puncher himself, but I don't even think that it's the power that will ultimately set Berlanga apart against McCrory. I think it's the fact that Berlanga is probably actually a better boxer than McCrory. Again, Berlanga's got power and Berlanga is not fleet of foot, but he, again, does have a pretty good jab. He does have decent, not very good, but decent head movement. And I think that his punch selection is improving. He's becoming a little bit less predictable. I still think that sometimes he gets too much into a predictable punch pattern. And again, I think that his footwork leaves a lot to be desired, but Padraig McCrory isn't the type of fighter that will exploit that. Now, maybe he throws us a curveball like Jermaine Ortiz did against Teofimo Lopez, and maybe McCrory comes out, moving around the perimeter of the ring and just selectively stopping and planting, firing a couple shots, ambushing, and then getting back on his bike. Maybe McCrory subtly does that, but I don't know that to be his MO. No, I think that he's going to be looking to land big shots against Berlanga. But I think that Berlanga's got the better jab. And if you're going to engage in a firefight with Berlanga, you better, one, be somewhat defensively sound. I don't see McCrory as being a good defensive fighter. Again, look at that fight against Steve Woodall. I mean, look at his fight like 5 fights ago against the veteran Marco Antonio Parabin. Like, that was exciting for as long as it lasted. McCrory is pretty much there to get hit. That's bad news if you're fighting Edgar Berlanga. I don't think that McCrory has like Jaime Munguia type firepower, Canelo firepower, the David Benavidez firepower, David Morrell firepower. Again, he's pretty heavy-handed and he's trying to throw hard shots. But if this is a game of who smokes who out of the pocket first, I don't see Berlanga being the guy to get blasted and then Berlanga to take the sweet science approach and trying to stay away from McCrory's big shots. No, I think that if they start trading, that it's going to be McCrory that gets hit with the bigger shots more frequently because, again, I think that Berlanga is actually the better boxer. I'm actually going to pick Berlanga in this one, not only to win the fight, but I think that this is going to be the first Edgar Berlanga knockout since late 2020. Would you believe that? Edgar Berlanga has not scored a knockout since December of 2020. I think that he's going to stop Padraig McCrory. I think that even though in terms of McCrory's current stature, like, you know, with the WBA and just where his overall ranking is, not that he's like a Ring Magazine top 10 168. He will be if he beats Berlanga, but he's not there right now. But overall, I just, again, look at his style as fitting Edgar Berlanga's style like a glove. Edgar Berlanga doesn't have to deal with the sophisticated movement. He doesn't have to deal with somebody who's just going to sweet science and out jab him and be elusive. He's not going to find much of that with McCrory. He's going to find a willing participant in a firefight, I believe. Again, unless we get a stylistic curveball, that's what I'm expecting. And I'm expecting Berlanga to come through with a mix of boxing and eventually punching power to stop Padraig McCrory. And, you know, Berlanga needs a big showing like that if he wants to get a big fight next. Now, again, I don't like the fact that Berlanga versus Jaime Munguia has not yet been made. You know, I feel like they should have fought by now. But if Berlanga scores a knockout here, not only can he get, well, he could have gotten any big fight because it's not like David Benavidez wouldn't fight him. It's not like David Morrell wouldn't. It's not like any Christian Mabili. Any one of these guys would probably be happy to share the ring with Edgar Berlanga because, again, he's got the name recognition, but he is seen as a vulnerable fighter. So what could be better? A big name, relatively, and somebody who you've got a good chance at beating. I think a lot of, you know, elite and near elite 168 guys see Berlanga as that. But if Berlanga comes through and looks very impressive and say he stops McCrory, which again, I expect him to, again, the Canelo fight has not yet been scheduled. I still think that there's an outside shot that Canelo picks Berlanga and that they do the cross promotional. Well, we don't even know what Canelo's status with PBC and this new Amazon Prime contract. We don't have those answers yet. What we do have is Canelo saying that he's not going to fight a Mexican opponent in his next fight, that he's going to fight an American. So that has people thinking, is it Jermall Charlo? And most people are saying, oh God, I hope it's not Jermall Charlo against Canelo next. They're saying, is it Terrence Crawford? They're saying, oh man, if only it could be David Benavidez. That's who most people want Canelo to fight. David Benavidez. That one should be the one that goes down. If not Benavidez, hey, I'm totally open and wanting a Canelo versus Terrence Crawford fight. I just think that that would be a generational great against generational great showdown. But yeah, so all Canelo's announcement really ruled out was Jaime Munguia. So Edgar Berlanga could still be in the running there. So let me know how you see Berlanga versus McCrory. Again, I'm picking Berlanga via stoppage. And depending on what we get in this fight, how do you see Berlanga's path going forward? Do you see them eventually doing maybe a Munguia versus Berlanga fight next? If neither of those guys get the next Canelo fight, do you think that that fight will be made? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And by the way, that should be an easy one to make because both Jaime Munguia and Edgar Berlanga, at least right now, fight on DAZN. Berlanga with Matchroom currently, and Jaime Munguia with Golden Boy. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.